to the 10 Washington Podcast.
Well, hi there. Welcome once again to another edition of the Ted Wallison Podcast. Much appreciate you taking the time to be with us. Much appreciate, of course, the support of all of you and of a friend, Tom Mahalik at Tom's Place. You should drop by. They're open 7 days a week. 190 Baldwin in the heart of Kensington Market for the finest in men's clothing and the most amazing prices. Really, clothes come in. He marks the price down. You come to the counter with your handful of clothing. He marks it down again. It's really that cool. And of course, springtime, summertime, change of clothing. Maybe you've got a wedding coming up. He can help you out because Tom is there to do that. Will suit you. That's Tom's Place, 190 Baldwin and Kensington Market. And thanks again, as usual, to Paul Gatt, our executive producer, for making everything happen. And music is brought to you by the Bike Thieves. It's my son's band. And the little lady at the beginning of the program who says, "Welcome to the Ted Wallison Podcast," that would be my granddaughter. Because as you know, ladies and gentlemen, family works cheap. Now, this week, a look at a most compelling feature-length documentary titled The Delivery Line, Midwives of the Front Lines, an examination of some of our more overwhelming global issues like migration, crime, climate change, and war, but it's done through one of life's most joyous experiences, and that, of course, is childbirth. The Delivery Line weaves together inspiring stories of 5 fascinating women. Midwives they are, from Mexico, Colombia, Afghanistan, Nigeria, and even here in Toronto, Canada. Filmed by veteran director-producer Nance Ackerman and producer Sergio Kirby. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us. First of all, congratulations. Just a magnificent film, so compelling. I got to tell you, there were times when I had a difficult time watching it at times. It was just what I witnessed and what you must have witnessed when you're shooting it. It's just, it's mind-boggling. It's so, at times it's so uplifting to see, what these women have gone through and how they managed to go through it. And other times you think to myself, how can this be happening? It's 2026.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having us. Yeah, it was a tough film to make, but it was it took us 8 years to make it. So it
Yeah.
took a long time, but we made, basically they're like family, these women, and we love them and we collaborated with them and could try to find the hope in a lot of those. I had a tough time with certain aspects of the film too.
Well, many people would wonder, okay, why would you take on such a topic? For you, it goes back, Nance. Both your children were born with the assistance of a midwife. Can we go back to that time and you tell me a little bit about that experience?
Back to the dark ages.
Well, it was clearly longer than 8 years ago.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So way back when. Yeah, when I had my kids, I actually had 2 midwives with me for both of them, which you always have when you have a home birth. And I had just decided that midwives and being at home was the way to go. They also, I had gone into premature labor. I was covering the Oka crisis and
Right.
I got pulled through a car window and went into
Ugh.
premature labor at about 7.5 months. Basically, I was told I had to be on bed rest, and midwives gave me some homeopathic remedies and helped me with massage and sort of definitely a holistic and mental and emotional way of coping with stopping a premature labor. And my faith in them just grew from there.
You, and I quote you on this, it says, this was truly a labor of love for me. Stories of conflict and crisis. You mentioned just a few moments ago how there were at times moments where it was very difficult for you. We have to understand that the concept of midwifery, as we consider it here in Canada, it's totally divorced from. There are 5 stories that you tell. The one deals with the midwife in Toronto, which really sticks out in comparison to the other 4, which were in war-torn areas such as Afghanistan. And you're talking poverty, we're talking crime, we're talking the lack of medical equipment. in many cases, a lack of medical experience. They're totally different things, and there must have been times when you thought, "I don't know if I can go on. I need a break."
Well, I mean, because we did it over 8 years, we did have
Yeah,
breaks. It wasn't like it was a constant thing. And what was good is that we both, Sergio can talk about it, but we both made other films. I made one extremely heavy duty one, and then I made a really lovely, uplifting, fun one. And so, I mean, and then one where I was just outside in nature all day long. So that was very therapeutic. So we had a lot of time to kind of deal with those feelings. For me, because I'm a photojournalist at heart, I was a photojournalist way back in the 90s and covered a lot of war zones and a lot of conflict and a lot of poverty and abject poverty, like kids in dumps and in India. And basically, I don't know, you build up a bit of a shell, and the camera is a bit of a shell, right? It separates you just a little bit, but I don't know. I think it's whether I got old or just the Nigerian malnutrition center where we were, and when Hamsatu was talking about the malnutrition and the starvation because of climate change and because of the armed groups coming down and pushing people off their farmland, they're starving to death, and in the hundreds of thousands and millions actually. And that was it got to me. Honestly, for the first time, it really got to me, and I covered children on the, front lines of war and, Beirut, and I've been all over the place, but this really got to me. I had nightmares, and I think what keeps you going is that you hope that someone is gonna see this, and someone that has the ability to create change or to create a change of perspective so that people look at things just a little bit differently, and by including Canada, I think we brought it to everyone's backyard
yeah.
instead of saying, "Oh, it's a problem way over there." So, yeah, I guess that's how you keep going. Serge, what do you
Yeah, I mean, you summed it up quite well. I mean, I think, the craft of midwifery was really inspiring for us. I mean, obviously, Nance has a history in terms of understanding where it comes from. And so I learned a lot on this production. But, throughout it, what was really empowering for us was just realizing how essential the services of a midwife was, and how vital they are within any kind of level of conflict. And so while it is hard at times when you're filming in these, really, sometimes dangerous, sometimes
Yeah.
just sad, but that's their world. And you just realize how essential that service is. And, I think we in North America think of midwifery kind of nostalgically or as a luxury, but even in North America it still is in essence a frontline service where it's like it is helping people that are not able to, and it just fills so many other roles. Like birth is just one small facet of what they're contributing to society. So I think the film for us was trying to bring that to the public and trying to make them more aware of the essentialness of the service, and also just trying to resend and both as uh, you know, I guess recipients of conflict. Don't necessarily want to say victims, but more as they become part of the consequences of war, and as people that are also there to play an active role in reducing conflict.
So you're dealing with so many different aspects. As I mentioned, crime, and there's so many in some areas where you're just restricted. You can't go there because it's a village that's just been taken over by the bad guys, as it were. And it's not only that you're dealing with. You're dealing with climate. You're dealing with terrain. But you're also dealing with having to gain the confidence of not only the midwives who are the focus of the stories, but also the women who are giving birth. That's a difficult task, I would imagine, and a daunting task, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, we get asked that a lot, and I think the midwives were the big key into the community, right? So, and they're so respected and really revered, especially in Afghanistan. They were, but so it's pretty easy in terms of if a woman trusted the midwife and the midwife trusted us. then it wasn't that difficult. Yeah, and again, gaining trust. I mean, both of us have been doing this for an extremely long time. We've been making documentaries, and it doesn't matter whether it's just, giving birth or, sharing your life story or, talking about whatever it is that your story is being documented. It's a level of trust, and as documentary filmmakers, all of us have to gain it. And I do it probably a little more vulnerably than other people do. I don't mind telling our participants that I've gone through certain things, and I had a midwife and I helped deliver several babies, and I think there's a lot to be said for sharing a bit of yourself, and then you gain the trust of your participant. We also don't call them subjects, we call them participants and collaborators, and they have a lot of say in what goes into the film and what can't go into the film in my films. So it is very collaborative, and I think several times in other films that I've done, I've actually put people in contact with people that were in my films in past films, and that really helped. And they were, so they could describe the process to them in a way that made them feel better. So yeah, it's a process and it takes a long time. Part of the reason why it took us 8 years was finding the right people and gaining the trust and sharing their lives with them.
You mentioned Afghanistan, and it's pointed out that the leading cause of death in women in Afghanistan is not war, but it's childbirth. I mean, that's something that here in Canada is such a difficult thing for us to wrap our heads around, but it is reality. When you set out to search to do this project, how did you go about finding, or either of you, how did you go about finding the midwives that you wanted to work with?
Well, Serge, you want to?
Yeah, I mean, well, you you led the search on that. I mean, Nance holds a lot of hats. I mean, well, with Golbadan, we had initially I was there working on another film in Afghanistan called The Forbidden Reel that also was a TVO commission that had commissioned the project, and it was about the history of Afghanistan. And the director was Ariel Nasser, and he's a Canadian Afghan. And we were making a film then. And so Nance basically had a contract to do a short film on a midwife. And so she reached out to Ariel and they went out searching for midwives.
Mhm.
And that's what sort of triggered this whole project. And they approached me with the idea that this could be a much stronger feature film. And I agreed because I was like, that was an amazing example of a story. And then from there, we kind of built it out and realized that there's so many other examples of
And
amazing
thousands.
of women that
We have
are in front of us.
pages of
Mhm.
women but we had to choose, like, because this isn't really a film necessarily about childbirth. This is a film
No.
about poverty, about drug cartels and violence, gang violence. This is about homelessness and, you know, migration. And it's a film about all those subjects that we're all kind of a little sick of. And I just thought that I love midwifery, I love childbirth, and I've been covering all these issues my whole career. What's a way to cover these issues to show people that, they're still going on in some of the forgotten places in the world. They're still going on, but to do it through this hopeful lens. And we found the women just by researching those subjects, like, okay, who's on the border of the US and Mexico? Well, Jimena's organization was very easy to find, and she was recommended by several people. And, the Azoparupa in Colombia, definitely they run the show. They're the only midwives operating in that area. So it wasn't hard to find these women that kind of matched our issue-based search, basically. And again, we could do another 5, we could do another 50 of
Yeah.
these women, 150,000 of these women. Yeah. There's so many amazing women around the world
You
doing these amazing things.
talk about in the different places that you went. Nigeria, the most deadliest place on earth to give birth. Now, is that because of the facilities or the lack thereof, or is it because of the cartels? Is it because of the violence? Is it because of the difficulty in getting to medical assistance and getting medical assistance and medical equipment and medicine, etc., or is that a combination of all those things?
Well, it's mainly in the north, and the problems there stem where you've got this sort of boomerang climate problem where you've got severe drought and heat and then severe flooding.
Yeah,
So people's farms, and they all just live off their farm that's right outside their house, and all those farms are flooded, and or they're drought and dried up and gone. And combined with that, you have armed groups who've splintered or fighting themselves, coming down, kidnapping girls, killing and burning villages. So people have to keep moving and keep moving, and they leave all their ways to feed themselves. So you've got most of the women that are giving birth are malnourished, extremely malnourished. So being malnourished combined with no facilities whatsoever. I mean, you saw they're, using water on the ground, and
yeah,
the bed was not really a bed.
yeah.
Um, the- you know, so the facilities and the remoteness, the access to any kind of decent care is so far away because the roads are so bad and you can't get there in any kind of a hurry. Yeah, they've got so many things going against them there in the north, so that's why they're dying.
What amazes me is the ingenuity that is involved in Colombia, for example. Maria was the midwife that you focus on in Colombia. You see her making, and the local folks making medicines from local herbs as they chop them up and then they grind them up and then they make it into a drink, and they look like they're soda pop bottles that they're pouring them into, right? And it's to take away the pressure from the mother as she's about to give birth, or as she is giving birth. Did some of these home brew medications take you aback and think to yourself, maybe they're not doing what they should be doing? Maybe this is not a good move?
Well, no, I'm of the opposite camp.
Okay. No, I was just
Mainly
wondering.
because if you research where a lot of our medications come from, obviously they come from herbs and
Yeah,
minerals. So it's not, to me, getting back to their ancestral ways. Though that Tomaseka, I mean, we drank plenty of it. Delicious, and the things that are in it to have, calendula and all that. All you're doing is helping your body in that time when it's going through such a stressful time. So no, we were trying to figure out ways to bring it back. I wanted bottles of it here.
right.
It's wonderful stuff. It's lovely healing herbs. So no, I think that honestly what she did, and I don't know that the death rates, the maternal health problems in Colombia are not necessarily from people. It's not remote. It's not, they've got a decent hospital in the city where we were. It's not necessarily that. It's getting to the women in the barrios and the gangs allowing any help to come in. So it's more you're dealing with the violence of the place. So yeah, no, I could live on Thomasek. I love that stuff.
It's tasty.
I'd like to try
Really,
some right now, to be honest. What was it like?
really good.
What was it like dealing with the various levels of government? Because obviously you can't just cross a border without proper paperwork. Were they warning you? Were they telling you stay away from certain areas, or these areas? Maybe they would suggest that you go here because they really need your assistance here. And the bureaucracy involved, was that a major hassle?
Not really. I mean,
Afghanistan, Nigeria were the only places.
yeah. I mean, as filmmakers, we tend to work with local crew, a limited local crew, which is usually given the a person given the unglamorous name of a fixer, in that they help escort us in and out of certain places. For both Afghanistan and Nigeria, we also partnered up with a couple different organizations. We partnered up with the Red Cross, and we also got assistance from the Aga Khan Foundation, which runs some of the health clinics and has educations and also has business industry in Afghanistan. And so those were two organizations. So the Red Cross was able to provide some logistical support when we were in Nigeria. And then the Aga Khan similarly. And then, we're a small crew. So, when we're going into locations, we're not really advertising ourselves as a big film production company. So we try to keep the paperwork to a minimum. Sometimes we won't even go in with any kind of like paperwork other than just traveling there. So sometimes we won't even announce ourselves as kind of a business. We can just go in as a tourist
And we're
visa.
sort of stealthy. We're a little bit
Yeah.
stealthy.
So, because it's just the two of us. So in this
Yeah.
case, there was a few times we went with 3 people, but most of the time it was just me and Nance
We
that were
needed permits
traveling.
in Nigeria, right? We needed permits in Nigeria,
Yeah,
and then the second time trying to get into Afghanistan
Afghanistan was tricky.
because a female filmmaker, uh, they were not Taliban wasn't letting us in. We didn't get in. We had our local
Yeah.
crew.
So there is definitely challenges, and yeah, as Nan says, sometimes it doesn't work. But I mean, there's persistent ways you can do it, and you can get around it. But yeah, I mean, doc filmmaking is a host of challenges. Those are definitely one of them.
That's the lowest on the.
Yeah, I'm going to quote you again, Nancy. The stories of conflict and crisis have been told through a male lens for so long. I'm grateful for the opportunity to change that perspective. More about your thoughts on that matter and yours as well, Serge.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious that throughout,
Yeah.
history and not only, conflict and crisis are not just, shown on news through a male perspective, but I think without us even because most of the people running, for a very long time, and I think still running the big networks and the biggest media outlets are men. And war and conflict correspondents throughout history have been men. There are now a lot more women doing it and women photojournalists as well. I think a part of that is more when you think about a war and you think about the news that you get about it is generally like, okay, well, how many bombs were gone off or how many ships were hit or how much money is it costing to do this or how many boots on the ground and how many troops. And it's all very, and to me, those are the least important things in a conflict, and the most important are the civilians and the people, who are falling, victim to all this. And I just think that to show this in a way, like if I was to shoot this compared to say, you to shoot it, it would be a very different perspective because, I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, so it's a different way of looking at the world and it's a different way of looking at crisis and war and homelessness and yeah,
Well,
our social problems.
I suppose it's easier in one sense because you're dealing with women and you're coming from a female perspective, so they're going to be more open to you than they would be to men. And this is a very personal thing, obviously. But by the same token, there are some of these countries that you go to. Women are third class citizens, not even second class citizens. They're like third class citizens. They must have looked at you and said, "Well, no, we don't want you here. Get out. You're a woman. What are you doing here?" Afghanistan would be the first country that would pop into my mind.
Yeah, I mean, well, I was, and I think the reason I wasn't allowed in, but they were sort of randomly not letting people in, the Taliban. But I was there 2 or 3 times. I can't remember how many times in Afghanistan. And again, it depends on the media that you watch and that you read. In Afghanistan, I don't think I've ever felt more taken care of and respected. So, because I think you're casting or people cast judgment on a culture and a religion and from your own perspective you just can't help it from a North American, from a first world, from a other religious perspective. And I just don't go into things like that, so I felt very comfortable and very taken care of and very respected in Afghanistan when I was there before the Taliban took over. And so it's not all kind of what it seems like, they're not, I mean, I wore a head covering out of respect, but I wasn't at all treated in any way badly there. And, in fact, I had to keep fighting them off because they kept trying to carry my bags for me. And it was just like literally like, I was like, no, I need my camera on me. But, they're just so, they do respect women in a sense of which may not meld well with our culture here in more of a, could it be an ownership way of thinking of it? Could it be I need to take care of you because I'm a man and you're a woman way, which doesn't go over well here, but it works for them there. it's complex. So I tend to travel to places and try really hard to not impose what I think is right or wrong. You're there in their culture, in their world. And to me, it's best to just learn.
And Serge, what about from your perspective? Did you take anything from this from that you haven't
Yeah.
from other projects?
I mean, I definitely enjoyed participating in the film from the idea that I think that there is a lot to learn in terms of how we look at conflict, and the idea that there is other ways in which we can approach it. And I think that's kind of how the midwives were there. There's something about, I think the female lens, as well as, say, the female leadership vis-a-vis the midwives, is very much rooted in a sense of community. It's rooted in a sense of family. It's more in a sense of negotiation and accommodation. It has more of an empathetic kind of a way of approaching conflict, in a sense of understanding, but also very protective. I think that those were elements that we wanted to lean into.
And the empowerment too. Like,
Yeah.
these midwives were empowering these women. Is about empowering women, childbirth.
Ted Woloshyn returns in a moment.
I've had the great fortune to say that I've been associated with one of Toronto's finest names in men's clothing for more than 25 years. Tom's Place. Founded by Tom Mahalick's father in 1958, Tom's Place offers brand name men's apparel at unbeatable prices. But more than that, they boast a long-serving, knowledgeable, and friendly staff that can assist you whether you're looking for casual or formal attire. And they have plenty of first-class tailors on site. In addition, Tom and his family are well known for their philanthropic work. So if you're looking to deal with great people who can fulfill your clothing desires at outstanding prices, do yourself a favor and visit Tom's Place. They're open weekdays from 11 to 6, Saturdays 10 to 5, and Sundays noon to 5. You'll find Tom's Place at 190 Baldwin in the heart of Kensington Market. Or check them out online at toms-place.com. Tom's Place will suit you.
Now back to Ted Woloshyn.
I couldn't unsee what I saw. I decided that I wanted to do something.
My job is to provide care, but to also say, I see you.
The five women that you spoke to, that you focus on, the five midwives, they're all from different countries, and they're all individuals, and they're different people, but they all have the same passion and the same drive. I suppose. But then when you move to do a segment in Toronto, you're looking at a totally different world here. You're thinking that, well, we're not looking at cartels. Is homelessness a problem here? Absolutely. Do we have issues with our healthcare system? Absolutely, we do. But it's not the same. You're not. And I think to myself, there's a reason that you chose Toronto as opposed to the fact that just because it's a different city. And or am I on the wrong? Am I thinking incorrectly here? Is why Toronto in the midst of Nigeria and Mexico and Afghanistan? It seems like
I think if you were to speak to a pregnant woman living in the wintertime underneath the underpass on the Gardiner Expressway, not being able to get access any kind of care because she's addicted to OxyContin or whatever she's addicted to, and knows she's going to have her baby taken away from her and is on threat of being raped at any point by the other guys living underneath. I think if you
Yeah.
spoke to them, they may not tell you that it's all that different. If they knew what it was like for a woman living in a tent on the border of Mexico, or a woman living in another tent in a refugee camp in Nigeria. Honestly, some of those tents were better off than the women living under those expressways in Toronto. So I think it's all perspective, and I think we had to bring it home to people's backyards to point. I didn't want it to be this great white judgment of the world. I wanted it to be, these problems exist here and people are in just as dire circumstances because they can't access that health care. They can't deal with their issues without the help of someone like Jay. And yeah, we felt pretty strongly that this had to be, my photojournalistic visual was like, this is never going to work. This is never going to work, because just the power of the imagery I felt wasn't going to keep up to the power of the imagery. But hands down, every single person that's seen this film has said that that was extremely powerful to them.
I agree 100%. And the reason I'm asking you, I guess you gave me the answer that I wanted to hear, because I think it's important that people do realize that, because we are living in this big, beautiful city with sports teams and luxurious condos and things, that part of the world, those parts of the world exist right here in our own city. And a lot of people just don't get that at all. They think it's just
Yeah.
people who've.
I would
go ahead.
add to the fact that there was a lot of stories that we didn't necessarily dive into that are applicable to North American midwives. I mean, any not just unhoused individuals or people that are battling with substance abuse or addictions. There's people that are undocumented migrants, people that are
Refugees.
have mental health issues, all the refugee categories, people that fall out of the healthcare system for various reasons, whether it's personal, whether they making their own religious choices, people that are in isolated religious communities,
Just
they can't
isolated
access it.
communities.
Just isolated, anywhere in the north. Like one of the characters that we did want to do was to go to the north, because we thought that would be really good, because if anything, that's a major issue, is that for Indigenous people in the North, it's a sort of another form of colonialism where we've told them that the medical practices needs to be done in a certain way. And so all of the traditional means in which they give birth have evaporated. And so for them to give birth in a moderately safe setting, they have to fly south. So right away, it's a very disruptive process where they come down south. They're normally from a northern community. Sometimes it's a dry community up north. They're confronted with, in a new community without their family. They're down here in a hospital, and this town has
So
readily
isolated.
access to alcohol. And there's postpartum. There's any number of things that sort of arrive that they're not necessarily used to, and they don't have the community to insulate them. So just those communities. I mean, there's so many examples that I think. There's midwives that are in LGBTQ plus communities that feel that they're left out of the healthcare system. When you start opening it up, you realize how many examples. I mean, we were taking more of the front line of the drug category because it linked up, but
Well,
there, there's,
and the housing crisis, right? I mean, these
Yeah.
are so
yes.
So you excuse me, you're dealing with these fascinating stories about what these women do, but then there's the stories of these women, these midwives themselves. And you mentioned Jay here in Toronto. Now here's a woman who's battling cancer, and she talks about how she's like, okay, can we get through these treatments already so I can move on and do what I need to do? You talk about a selfless individual. Man, you could do a documentary on her alone, I would think.
could have done. Yeah.
Maybe all five of them, I would think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we think so too.
Yeah. I mean, that's originally how we wanted it to go, but sometimes it's hard to get, stories like this through to the big broadcasting channels because audiences are tiered towards young male viewership.
Yeah.
So, we hit some walls with this project and, we're very thankful that we have the partners we have, TVO and others that are on board and recognize the value of this film. But I mean, it's making a female lens of the world, even though it's conflict driven, you still have people in broadcast channels or, executive suites that don't value these types of stories because
Mhm.
it's about women and they don't see that as important for their broadcast. So that was something we were fighting, and that's another reason why it took 8 years to produce. Because broadcasters struggle to recognize the importance of women's voices in the mainstream media.
I can argue that. These we talked about the fact that this all took place over an 8-year period. So did you have an opportunity to go back to see any of these women who had given birth and to see how their children were doing and the lives in the midwives, whether they had continued to follow through with those children, although that is not their task. But a lot of these women, they give birth. It's not like here where the birth rate is like 1.2 children per family. There they're giving birth on an almost annual basis. In some cases, one woman talked about her aunt who unfortunately passed after her giving birth to her last child, where she said she was literally giving birth to a child every year. But did you have a chance to follow up during that 8-year period?
Well, because we went to, sort of financial
Okay.
restrictions and our schedule restrictions and access and everything else, we followed up with people in Mexico and Colombia.
Okay.
So we knew that Claudia, who was at the very beginning of the film, did manage to cross over and had her baby in San Diego. We'd heard about that. There was another woman who you see in the film in Mexico in the shelter who we came back uh maybe it was only like it was in the same year. It was in the same like it was like 3 months later or something, and she had actually given birth in the shelter by herself because it happened so fast. She didn't even bother calling Jimena. So yeah, so we sort of knew what happened there. And what was kind of wonderful with Gulbadan is that she had her baby with her. Omid was with her at school. And when the crew went back, we got a real update from them about how the kids were doing and everything. But, it's pretty difficult to we went in after with Aisha after in Nigeria, and she was doing very well with her baby after almost hemorrhaging to death. So we stay long enough or we get back soon enough that we've checked in on quite a few of them. Yes, but pretty well everybody. Monica, one of the woman that got checked in Colombia, we kind of didn't know what happened to her.
Hmm.
Yeah, so
And also, I mean, one of the midwives that we follow, of course, is Jimena. And of course, we'd spend a lot of time with her. And so we followed her and her
Hmm.
own birth. So that's, the
had a
surprise in
miscarriage,
the film.
pregnancy, and birth in the
Yeah.
time that we were
In
Yeah.
filming.
exactly. So it's like that, definitely there's a sense that, I mean, because we're staying in touch with the midwives, they're part of that community. So they're part of that infrastructural networking. And they, of course, like Jimena's a great example, even though the women leave and cross over into the States, she still has a network that is able to keep tap. And also they reach back and keep in touch with her. And so that's part of, I guess, the enduring strength of midwifery is that still builds community. And so if we continue to reach out and get, information, like we're in contact with Gulbadan and, her still getting set up with her own home clinic. And we're hoping to bring the film back to some of these communities.
Right.
And so that is we'll plan is to see them and present the film to their community.
I'm often fascinated by what inspires people to take the paths that they choose in lives. And as we talked, Nancy, you two of your children were born with the assistance of midwives. And then the story of Maria in Colombia, who talks about at the age of 10, or it's talked about at least at the age of 10 or 11, watching her grandmother through a crack in the door delivering a baby, and her grandmother calling out to her, "Get me this. I need this. Get me this." That was her inspiration as a 10-year-old child, 11-year-old child, to become a midwife, and that's another one of those stories within a story that I found, which makes the documentary such a fascinating.
Yeah, yeah, she was well, she's such a great well, all of them are great storytellers, but she was she was so funny. Yeah, and I think I think that's what got her really, embedded in the ancestral herbal thing, because it's always was, "Go run out and get me this herb," and so, definitely an ancestral, cultural, thread going through her life that really, yeah, inspired her, yeah.
Any idea when this will be able, your film will be available, at least for public consumption? Because as like most documentaries, you don't have big networks staying behind you willing to give you an hour and a half of their time.
For sure. Well, I mean, we do have, TVO, which is our principal broadcast partner. They're going to be playing the film next year, and you'll be able to access it online at that time.
Perfect. Great.
However, before then, we would love people to see it in the theater. It is a theatrical film. So it does have some great possibilities. We will be updating our public with festival screenings across Canada. There's a number of festivals that have already chosen it. So we will announce those when their press releases come out. So usually, over time we'll be populating the website with festivals across Canada in various cities. And then we'll be doing a limited theatrical run in some of the commercial theaters in the fall. And so we encourage people to look out. The deliveryline.com is a wonderful website that Nance put together. And it has, we're going to post some of the press clips, some such as this, Ted, and a few other, getting really good press and having great discussions. So, we encourage people to reach out, and then they can also host screenings if they want.
Great.
We encourage midwives to reach out, and or just people that are interested in hosting a discussion. They can ask to have the film be brought to their community, and if they're interested in the topic, there's issues in Canada I think we need to address, and maternal health is definitely key. So we're encouraging people to connect with us on the website, the delivery line.
Have you taken the time to show this to members of parliament, to those who make the decisions revolving around midwifery, at least in this country?
Well, we had some members of Ontario legislature at
Okay.
the screening, but no, we haven't approached members of parliament. I probably will invite if we get into. I'm in Nova Scotia, so I might end up doing that with inviting a member of parliament to some of the screenings here. So yeah, that's a good idea. I think when any politician gets affected by a story, I think it's always a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I agree that this should be available for every educational institution from the grade school level, upper grade school level, because I think it's important for people to see what it is, because as you mentioned, this is more about the assisting of women, assistance for women in giving birth. It's all kinds of stories in one, and it's a compelling film. I really suggest that people take the time and see it when they can. In the meantime, the best thing for people to do that in terms of planning for the future of where they can see it and where it may be available, is there a website available?
Yeah, thedeliveryline.com. Yeah.
Okay. Thedeliveryline.com. The delivery line, midwives on the front lines. Thank you both very much, and congratulations for an excellent piece.
Thanks for having me.
My
Thanks,
pleasure.
Ed. It was great to talk.
It is my pleasure. Well, that's going to wrap up another edition of the Ted Wallachin Podcast. As usual, we invite you to drop by our website, www.tedwallachin, WOLOSHYN.ca, with your thoughts and your comments. Pass that information along to your friends, and we'd appreciate if you subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. It's free. It means a lot to us. We will appreciate that. And while you're online, of course, don't forget to fill out your organ and tissue donation card, because you could change or even save a life. In the meantime, have a great week.
Could have worn another shirt.